When we start talking about the expansion of St James's Park, it leads to a lot of speculation and debate. In fact, the Newcastle United owners have talked about this as being really quite a conundrum because it's complex. We've got a city centre stadium, one of the only ones in the country. It's hemmed in on all sides, and on this particular side, the east side, we have one of those complications. We have this beautiful Georgian building, Leazes Terrace, which is Grade 1 listed. So in this video, I'm going to attempt to explain a little bit more about Leazes Terrace so you've got a better understanding of it. But also as well, when they come to develop this side of the stand, don't forget they're doing a feasibility study, which is going to take about a year. I'm going to give you my views on what I think is going to be happening to this whole area here. It's coming up. Welcome back, it's Eddie here from Tyneside Life, and a couple of days ago I released a video in light of the news that was published in the Times about the Newcastle United owners about to commence a feasibility study on this side of the stadium, which will take about a year to get the results to see what they can and cannot do and what's feasible in relation to stadium expansion, specifically on this side, the rebuild of the East Stand, but also what they can and may not be able to do in relation to this land here. If I can just explain a little bit about this area where I'm stood now. This the road here, which you can see, this is a boundary line, so everything on this side of the road is a conservation area. This huge building on my right here is Leazes Terrace, Grade 1 listed building, which means it's of significant historical interest and has special preservation rights. I think one of the main motivations for our new owners to redesign or rebuild the East Stand here is because it's 50 years old. It was built at a time in the 70s when brutalist architecture was very popular, and brutalist architecture means you see these huge ugly concrete slabs. It just looks awful, and for a stadium where our new owners want to bring it into the 21st century to become appealing to the stature that they're going to be building this club into, it just doesn't fit at all. Plus as well, if you can just see this road behind the stand, I mean there's parked cars everywhere. It's just awful. Now, Leazes Terrace here was built in the from 1829 to about 1834. That was at the same time as Granger Town was being built in Newcastle Town Centre, when they completely transformed the Newcastle Town Centre landscape by the architect and surveyor Thomas Oliver, who was building and designing for Richard Granger. But there was four guys in the main: Thomas Oliver, Richard Granger, John Dobson and John Clayton, who was the town clerk. Together they redesigned Newcastle, and they built this particular terrace block here for the more well-to-do in Newcastle, to get them outside of the town walls where it was dirty and dusty and noisy. That was even before Leazes Park was turned into the park that you see now. So when this was being built, Leazes Park wasn't Leazes Park, the whole area was called Castle Leazes. Now Castle Leazes is the area behind Leazes Park as we know it now, and it wasn't until about 50 years after the building of Leazes Terrace that they transformed Castle Leazes, split it in half in effect, and turned it into Leazes Park in 1873, more or less as you see it now. For Leazes Terrace, in terms of the building ownership and its uses now, it's a huge oblong shaped building. 2/3 of it are mainly students' halls of residence. There are a few offices that belong to Northumbria University, but the other side of the building, the terrace flats which face Leazes Park, they're privately owned flats. And the outside facade that you see here, these old beautiful Georgian brickwork, isn't the same on the inside where you've got this huge courtyard. It's much the same as St James's Terrace there. It's just this just ordinary brick. In terms of the ownership, the student section, which is basically 3/4 of it, is owned by a Saudi businessman. Now, I've been assured by Kash Mumtaz, who I did the video with a couple of days ago in relation to St James's Terrace. He's told me, because of the working relationships that he has, that it's not the PIF, it's an independent Saudi business. Nonetheless, it's owned by the Saudis. I'll quickly talk about what probably will and won't happen with Leazes Terrace in relation to any expansion of St James's Park, because there's a lot of talk about just demolishing it. Like I said, it's a Grade 1 listed building. It has special significant historical interest, and it has special preservation protections. So that's not easily done. This does happen from time to time where Grade 1 or Grade 2 listed buildings are knocked down, but that's usually because they're either in such a bad state, they're in a dangerous condition, or they're in such a poor state of repair it would just cost far too much to maintain the upkeep, or there is some wider economic benefit to the whole area. Now, if Newcastle United applied for that wider economic benefit, they'd have to show that having a football match 25 to 30 days a year is going to provide a wider economic benefit in Newcastle. I'm not convinced they'd win that battle, and even if they took on that battle, it would take several years and a huge public inquiry anyway. Plus, as well, like I said, the back end of the terrace block is privately owned, so they'd have to try and buy them out at a cost that would be several times its market value, and I'd imagine some of them would be quite stubborn. The club could apply for a compulsory purchase order for the whole building, but again, that would lead to a huge, protracted, complex and lengthy public inquiry that would take absolutely years and probably wouldn't win anyway. So when we start talking about in terms of just taking it down, demolishing it, or moving it brick by brick, that is probably the most unlikely thing that's going to happen to Leazes Terrace. I should say any committee that are going to be deciding the future of a building like this or St James's Terrace isn't Newcastle City Council in isolation. They will be involved, but also the owners of the buildings as well. But the big hitters in any committee debate on this would be the Secretary of State for Culture, but also as well in partnership with Heritage England. So this would be debated at Parliament level. So now in this part of the video, we're going to kind of get onto what I think might happen, because ever since Newcastle announced the sponsorship partnership with Seller, the Saudi-based events company, but also as well the news that's broke about a feasibility study into this area here, that's got me thinking right outside the box. It has adjusted a lot of things on the way I think about these matters in terms of expansion. My personal opinion is, because we're going to be talking about my opinion now, is that I'm not convinced our Saudi owners are primarily motivated to maximise expansion, to get as many people in there as they can. My opinion is that they want to maximise potential for St James's Park, not just to be the life and soul, the heart and soul and jewel of Newcastle city centre, but a jewel in a crown, to turn St James's Park into one huge, beautiful arena, and not just the arena itself, but to be surrounded with eye-catching fan zone areas that are an absolute pleasure to be in, not just for football fans, but for tourists coming to the city and those of us who live in the area as well. Of course, I take the owners to the word. They are, I believe, going to try and increase the capacity. They've mentioned a couple of times that they'd love to get it to 60, maybe 65,000, working in partnership with the council, and I hold them to their word on that. It's going to be complicated, but I think if you're expecting expansion above that, I wouldn't hold your breath and I wouldn't build your hopes up. In relation to this area here, I do believe they'll probably knock this east stand down and rebuild it completely, because it's flipping ugly. It's horrible. And rebuild it with advanced engineering and architectural skills, use better materials, that's more eye-catching, use a lot more glass. I do think that there's an opportunity to create a huge glass facade, including a canopy roof coming right over. And I think the Saudi owners and Amanda will be motivated to not to look to compromise the history of Newcastle by knocking things down, but to work in partnership and develop and to make these beautiful buildings part of the club and part of the city and bring it right up. And for that reason, I think Newcastle United might attempt to buy the section of this building, which is owned by the Saudi owner, and turn it into some sort of boutique hotel. That wouldn't happen with the back end unless they can get the private owners to sell up. But let's just take it as three sides of this, turn into one huge, beautiful boutique hotel, pedestrianise this whole area here. So you've got, and turn this grassed area along Leazes Terrace into alfresco dining and socialising areas for cafes, bars and restaurants. So you can imagine just coming up from Strawberry Place into this whole area, and it'll be absolutely beautiful with these gorgeous public realms of tables and chairs where you can walk around, have something to eat, have something to drink, check in to the Leazes Boutique Hotel here, and the entrance to that would be through the courtyard on the other side, because you wouldn't need to change anything on the front facade here. You could go in through the courtyard and create a beautiful hotel entrance. That's just where my mind is. Me thinking outside the box, thinking of ideas and opportunities, where I think this is probably heading. And it'll just be an absolutely stunning thing to see. So for me, when you start thinking in terms of those sort of ideas, it ticks all the boxes. Not only does it increase the commercial opportunities for the club, but also the commercial and economic opportunities for the city and all the revenue and tourism and investment that it's going to bring. But also it maintains the heritage and the history of our city by looking after beautiful buildings like this and to enhance them, to bring them up, to make it a more pleasurable experience. Because I know, having spoken to people who live in here, and I've been in here as well when I was interviewing Marion Williams, it's horrible inside. And students complain about the heating's unreliable. It's just basically it's all very run down and dishevelled. If this was turned into a boutique hotel with the same beautiful facade on the outside, just imagine what this whole area would look like. So there you go, that's my thoughts on the matter. That's me just thinking outside the box, starting to think of this with a completely different lens, and just trying to imagine what that would look like. So I hope I've done the same for you, to get you to think outside the box, to visualise something different to what's already in your mind, to think bigger. But let us know what you think. Let me know your ideas of what you think that could turn this whole area into. I'd be really interested to hear your views. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe. You know, I really want to get to 30,000 subscribers by the time the season kicks off on the 12th of August. Help me get there. And anyway, till next time, catch you later.